Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about the second trailer that just came out for Venom, Let There Be Carnage. If you haven't seen it already, I'll include a link to it in the description down below. But the trailer gives us a little bit more insight into the movie. Obviously, the whole situation with Cletus. It kind of answers somewhat answers a question, yet also continuing to ask why Cletus chose Eddie to be the one to kind of tell his story. And he says, like, what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. And I'm like, so is it because Eddie in some shape or form, because he later on there's, you know, someone holding a picture, I'm assuming it's Cletus, of like a mom, and I'm like, is that supposed to be like Cletus's mom died and maybe Eddie's related in some shape or form, or maybe it's supposed to be the explanation for like why he does what he does, like why, I mean, because we don't really know the like the whole thing behind like what type of victims he chose. Is it a thing of like, oh, he chooses victims that look like his mom, or whatever his whole deal is. I'm also curious, is he a cannibal? I feel like I remember hearing that Cletus is a cannibal. I'm not that well versed in the character, but the fact is he went out of his way to bite Eddie. I don't know whether there's a thing of like, oh, he bites every one of his victims or something like that, and it's like, really, is that all it took, was just biting Eddie to kind of, but I guess no, like he ended up biting Eddie and getting like Eddie's blood and Venom DNA inside of him essentially. And I think experiments, because I think that's the same place, like Ravencroft where he's being held, it's the same place they're like taking like people and experimenting on them. So I don't think they were necessarily killing Cletus when that, maybe they were, but maybe he was being experimented on at that time, and whatever they were doing didn't mix well, it arguably did mix well with the symbiote DNA that was inside of him, and hence why he became Carnage. It's so interesting because I'm curious, like, is the symbiote inside of him alive, or is it just kind of him, you know? Because obviously, like, what we saw in the trailers, we haven't really heard Carnage talk. We've heard Venom and Eddie talk as these two separate entities, which usually more often than not, they're kind of one mind. It's never really, I mean, there's later, I mean, I'm not well versed in the comics, but I know there's some animated stuff that's really, you know, made the symbiotes kind of stand out on their own. The one that comes to my mind is Spider-Man Unlimited, where like Carnage and Venom were just straight up just themselves. They didn't need a human host, at least not that I remember. It's been years. I haven't seen it since I was a little kid, so could be misremembering in that regard. But I just thought that was an interesting insight of just like, right, so maybe there's a lot more. Maybe it's not like, oh, I'm crazy, there's actually more to it, or maybe it's just like there could be more to it, and on top of that, I am crazy. I'm curious to see all that he ends up doing the moment he gets out. They are kind of like cutting away from like showing you like everything he does when he does eventually break out. But there was another point in the trailer I thought was really interesting too, was like when they're going toe to toe and Venom kind of backs down a little bit, which I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. It's very similar to Hulk versus Thanos. It's kind of like, no, I'm not coming out anymore after getting my ass handed to me by Thanos. It kind of seemed like it was kind of something in a similar vein. I thought it was really interesting. I'm curious. I'm not well versed in all things symbiotes either, but he was like, oh shit, he's red, and Eddie's like, all right, come out, I will let you literally eat everyone. He's like, really? Okay. So I don't remember it coming up in the first one, because I do know that there are symbiotes with different colors and stuff like that, but I'm wondering, like, does that represent some type of hierarchy? Like Carnage being red, it's like, oh, this guy's a badass, like we need to stay away from him because like the reds are usually like the more powerful, scarier symbiotes who can do a lot more? Or is it just because, oh, he's red and red's scary, so he must be a badass? I'm curious. I'm want to lean more towards one, because even just in the trailer they showcased the fact is that he's able to do more. I mean, I think Carnage has always been able to do more than Venom has, but that, you know, that could be my limited knowledge. But Carnage always shifts his body into weapons, which, like, the most you'll ever see Venom do that with is like he'll create tendrils. That's about it. So I'm wondering if there's some like correlation to be drawn there. But which I love the whole thing in this episode. The movie is like, you also have like Venom referring to Eddie as a loser, which I'm like, there's a whole point in the last movie where you're like, he's a loser, but you're also a loser too. So I guess it's like, I guess you're a more powerful loser. So it's like, right, I get to feel powerful in my own right, because there's no, like, at least at this time before Carnage pops up, now that, right, you know, Riz Ahmed's symbiote from last movie was dealt with, it's like there's no one else to really challenge him, so maybe he's feeling himself a little bit. It's like, I might have been a loser, but I'm going to be top dog here on this planet, so I run things. Eddie's trying to rein him in and be like, yo, you can't run too rampant. But it's like, oh, let's just go eat some bad guys already. But Eddie's like, no, there's going to be rules to how we handle this. So like kind of like that buddy cop element being back. Obviously we get even more, like obviously we got some of that in the first trailer, but now we're getting even more of it. Obviously when it comes to him and his ex who's moved on, and it's like, oh, she's engaged, cool. They bring it up earlier, it's a whole Ravencroft thing. Like I said, if those two things are the same thing, because obviously, you know, Eddie wants to stay low-key because it's like, the last thing I want to do is become a science experiment. So obviously we see an element of that. I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if those two sides are going to cross in that regard. Because like I said, I think the place he's locked up in is Ravencroft, and that's also where they're doing the experiments, maybe in like the basement or something like that. Or maybe those are two separate things and I'm just being an idiot putting them together. You know, the storylines might still cross or whatever. Because like I said, we see that one person that was being experimented with. We see her like driving at one point, and like I said, she's shrieking. So I think, like I brought this up the first time when we saw her in the first trailer, I was like, I think that might be the symbiote Shriek. Once again, I think that's her name, but like, once again, there's different symbiotes that do different things. Like, just like Carnage is very different from Venom, like the other, which, like I said, I'm not well versed in them and all that they're capable of, but I believe that is one of the symbiotes. But I don't know, maybe that's something unrelated, not unrelated, but maybe it's something different than what I'm thinking it is. But still, just a lot of interesting things. Obviously, these are just some of the things kind of going through my mind about what we saw. I'd love to get to know your thoughts in the comments down below. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.